Hello, my fellow nerds! As you know, I'm a Eurovision fanatic, as seen from my very critical reviews every single year. But did you know that they tried to do Eurovision in the United States? That's right, folks. In 2022, the EBU decided, let's do Eurovision, but with US states. Hosted by Snoop Dogg and Kelly Clarkson, 50 US states, 5 US territories, and Washington, D.C., no, that's not technically a state, competed in a Eurovision-style song contest for the best original song in the USA, answering the age-old question, what if America did Eurovision? The EBU actually planned to host Amerivision since 2006. It was originally going to be a mini-challenge on American Idol. It was supposed to be in 2021, but then the Rona happened. And so in 2022, it finally became real. Kelly Clarkson, who was apparently a Eurovision fan, was enthusiastic to host, and Snoop Dogg was there too. An online submissions platform was launched in May 2021, allowing eligible artists aged 16 or older to apply. Participants were required to list all the states or territories which they had a, quote, authentic and deep connection to. So I guess they really didn't even have to be from the state, they could have just lived there for a couple of years. NBC originally planned the premiere for February 21st, 2022, but then the premiere was delayed again in favor of America's Got Talent Extreme and due to the Omicron variant. First live show was then rescheduled to March 21st, and the finale was on May 9th, which was the same week of Eurovision at that time. I watched the ASC in real time, dutifully following every update. I desperately wanted this to succeed. I wanted this to be an annual thing so the US could showcase small artists from across the country and not just Nepo babies from Los Angeles. I was absolutely stoked. So, how did it go? Well, not great. View numbers weren't the best, and media reception wasn't that great either. It was nominated for a Creative Emmy Arts Award for Outstanding Lighting Design, though. But after the event, only the winning song was on the Billboard charts, and most of the songs only gathered a few thousand streams each. In 2023, Martin Österdahl stated that partners in America are looking at other options. And in the end, it was not renewed for another season, and the dream of Eurovision in the US thusly died. But was it really all that bad? What was it really like? Well, let's take a look at the Amerivision Song Contest and see what went wrong and what went right. The ASC was horribly disorganized. The American Song Contest worked like a mix of Melodifestival and Supernova with 5 heats, 2 semifinals, and 1 final. There were 2 wild cards that would come back, and that depended on how much their songs were streamed on Spotify. Yes, it was a stupid system, but I'll explain more about it soon. The jury would select 1 entry, and then the top 3 audience voted would also move on to the semis. The same thing goes for the finals. There were a lot of things during the broadcast that happened where you can tell that they were very unprepared. Like, they didn't even mention the wild cards until like Heat 3, so I'm pretty sure we only had wild cards because everyone liked New Boot goofing so much. Also, only the jury votes were presented in the Heat system. We didn't get a America, start voting now until the finals. What would happen is that the jury would announce their winner, and then you'd have to wait an entire week to figure out who the audience selected to move on. When explaining the voting system, you can tell they didn't really know what they were doing. The editing and the broadcasting also looked very unprofessional. I remember the premiere cutting off right in the middle of the outro, and it just looked so messy. They would change the way that they presented the votes in every broadcast. Like, the first time they just announced it at the end and then just ended the show very abruptly. And then the next heat, they calculated it during the entire show so you could watch everyone's disappointment with the jury in real time. And then they stopped doing that again! And then they brought it back! The final performance of Alexa's song also came out of nowhere. You could tell that she wasn't prepared, and they didn't even announce her to perform again. And by then she was still in tears from winning. And it cut up in the middle of the song and just went to the next program. Font at the bottom changed between broadcasts from the numbers of performances to just the state name too. And then the main prize for winning was just being played on iHeart radio stations, and that was it. I mean, that's a big deal because they have the most popular radio stations across the country and run several different stations. But seriously? That's it? They could have given the winner a debut performance at Eurovision like they did with Australia before they actually started competing. That would have been super cool to have Alexa there in 2022. The premiere's commercial breaks were so frequent it was absurd. Like, I grew up with American television, and there were way too many breaks even for American television. But the weirdest thing of all of this, there were so many complaints that the ASC actually listened. People complained about the commercials. The next heat, there were a lot fewer commercials. People asked for a better explanation of the voting. They got it in the next heat. People complained New Boot Goofin' didn't make it. They opened up 2 wildcard spots. We complained about the jury. In the finals, they significantly cut the jury's power, perhaps a little bit too much. Like, they UMK'd it. People were complaining about the jury only picking white men. In Heat 5, the jury picked a girl. But that one might have been a coincidence. It was weird, but it was actually satisfying that they were actually listening to the concerns we made on Twitter. Now that's something I wouldn't mind seeing from the EBU. It felt like we were talking to a startup that was openly looking for advice on how to do better rather than an out-of-touch corporation like the EBU. Also, none of the individual performances or any of the shows except for the final were posted on YouTube. They were during the time of the contest, but then they just disappeared. Okay, scratch that, I'm wrong. You can find the individual performances if you live outside of the United States. You know, the country the song contest took place in. I can view everything from an EU country just fine. It's almost as if this contest wasn't really for Americans and is just a way for the Europeans to laugh at the United States. Or Martin Istedal was so embarrassed that he didn't want any Americans to see what a shit job they did. How do you expect someone to share a performance they like if they have to sift through an hour's worth of show content to see it? If you don't have performances up on YouTube, of course no one's going to be interested in your song contest. Who made this decision? Whoever it is, fire them because that's fucking dumb. What was also dumb is that we weren't allowed to hear the songs until the performances. Part of the hype of Eurovision is to listen to the songs leading up to the contest and get hyped. No wonder you don't have millions of views. You did no advertising on the songs. No one was excited to hear something live for the first time unless they were seeing their state or they knew the artist. There was no hype or turning in to see your favorite or how good or bad they sounded live. Bad and terrible decision on NBC's part. One of the worst parts of this disorganization really showed in the performances. The performances themselves were also incredibly messy. The worst part was that every performance had very loud backing vocals to the point where you could hardly hear the singer. Sometimes it felt like the singer was just fighting with the backing track. It wasn't just backing vocals, it was the singer's actual voice. So the singer could just lip sync and it would be hard to know the difference. That was probably the worst part of the whole contest. Also, earpieces were constantly falling out, and there were some mic issues, and it looks like they hardly rehearsed. The acoustics and the sound engineering were awful. I expect this from Armenia and Ukraine, but from the USA? It's like they didn't even tell the performers that there would be backing tracks. I mean, they hired Snoop Dogg, like they clearly had the budget. The staging for the most part was also boring, except for the first heat. And that's a death sentence for anything that is trying to be Eurovision. I swear, I've seen Arkansas's exact staging in Eurovision before. It feels like the Europeans set up the staging for the first heat, and you can tell by looking at some of them. And then it's like they left because they thought they can trust the Americans with the staging. Spoiler alert, they couldn't. The staging is so boring for most of them. Yes, everyone is 10 people on stage. Yes, it feels really crowded. No, they never stopped. There is one thing that I loved about the American Song Contest performances that isn't in the Eurovision Song Contest. And that is the performance in the semis are different from the heats, and the semi-performances were different from the finals. Or at the very least, they had different outfits. Which I think is really nice because you don't have the exact same performance and it makes you actually want to watch the heats and the semis and not just the finals. This is something I really liked about the American Song Contest and I think they should do this for Eurovision. Especially now, since the big five have to perform in the semis. The least you could do is spice up the performances a bit and maybe have multiple different outfits. It was never the same stuff you saw last week, and I really love that. The postcards also changed too. They were basically more about the artist and how they felt moving on to the finals and semifinals. Meanwhile, the Heat's postcards were just about the artist and what they do and like maybe their history and how they got started. But there were some really interesting moments on stage. When you think of Eurovision in the United States, you expect it to be full of big stars from Hollywood, maybe mixed in with some small artists from some no-name states. You'd also expect to see the big stars dominating the contest and steamrolling all the little guys. But what we actually got was the exact opposite. The majority of entrants were a bunch of smaller artists with a few medium-sized artists like Stella Cole and winner of The Voice Jordan Smith. And then we had a couple of big ones like Macy Gray and Jewel and Michael Bolton. Oh yeah, Michael Bolton competed. What's even more interesting is that you had big stars like Macy Gray and Jewel failing to qualify for the semifinals and losing to small artists that don't even have Wikipedia pages, which shows a lot of balance and that people aren't voting because they were fans, but they were genuinely voting for the songs that they liked. What? No neighbor voting? No wonder this had no Eurovision magic. But even though it was balanced, most of the entries were bad. Like, boring bad. And this is because there was an overwhelming amount of songs in rap, R&B, and country. 3 genres that are personally my least favorite genres. I've warmed up to some rap and R&B, but you gotta be really impressive for me to like your music. Most of the songs sounded exactly the same, were really bad, or were the most boring songs I have ever heard. I initially had high hopes for the ASC because the first heat started off really strong with rock from Minnesota and Mississippi, K-pop from Oklahoma, Puerto Rico bringing in a banger, mini cheese Elvis from Wisconsin, feminist rock from Iowa, the thing that everyone pictures when they think of America and Eurovision, and Michael Bolton, who decided to participate for some reason. So you can imagine after this heat, everyone was pretty disappointed when the other heats were full of nothing but back-to-back slow songs, country, and R&B. The staging in the first heat was also a lot better and more Eurovision-y than the rest of the heats, which only killed the hype even further. I'm not going to go through all 56 songs, so I'll just go over the songs that were good, memorable, or actually mattered. Honestly, I didn't expect the dumpster of the US to produce such a wholesome ballad. I honestly expected the trashiest country to ever trash. The harmony at the bridge sends chills down your spine. This was just cute and wholesome until you realize what Alabama is really like. Jewel was the first instance of a really big star failing to qualify out of the heat. Jewel is a pretty famous musician here in the US with a very tragic past, which she wrote a song about. And that song was actually really great and heartwarming. And she wasn't fighting for her life with the backing vocal track. You could hear her voice very loud and clear. And you can tell it's her actual voice. But someone should tell her she doesn't need to actually play her guitar on stage. It's Eurovision. The small amount of culture we actually got in the ASC, she was absolutely adorable, and her staging was actually pretty great. It really gave me a taste of Samoa, and I'm glad she made it to the finals. The feminist mariachi sisters were adorable, and their harmony was on point. Also, didn't know you were allowed to hand out things to the audience? I think this was the only song that was pretty much entirely in another language. Her staging was pretty, but this was the lady that will always be known as the Velveeta girl because she said that Velveeta was the best cheese dip. For those of you who don't know, Velveeta is like fake cheese.
Yes, we have shoes in Arkansas.
Yeah, but you don't have taste buds. Okay, now this dude was fun. This guy pushed the boundaries of things I didn't know you could do in this contest. Like, he went stage diving. He went and sang in the audience. He brought beach balls for the audience to throw around. He covered the stage in confetti during the semifinals. he brought his wife on stage and started dancing with her. And then both he and his wife dove into the audience during the finals. Every performance I was asking, wait, can you do that? Can you do that in Eurovision? He deserved that second place. Fuck the jury that rated him last place in the finals. The audience knows what's up. I feel like Michael Bolton was here for advertising purposes. He looks so uncomfortable and full of Botox while on the stage. My parents, who are boomers who normally love his music, were actually rooting against him in the finals. Nitro Nitra was also way underrated, which is why I'm glad they let her present the jury points. It was a unique mix of soul and rock. She had such a unique sound and a Eurovision-worthy outfit. She was just a little stiff and nervous, but hey, you do what you gotta do to produce that sound. She really needed some backup dancers, though. Dancers that didn't blend into the background. But she certainly deserved to qualify over Tennessee, of all people. I was so upset when Ale Zabala did not qualify. The song was cute, her performance was adorable, the Latin pop actually stood out. It's also so bright and pink and fluffy, and it actually feels like Eurovision if Eurovision had a Latina in it. This is where I discovered one of my favorite indie artists that ended up being one of my most listened to artists last winter. Stella Cole is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated artists out there, and she has some amazing bangers. Like, she has amazing stage presence, and even with the technical issues, she pulled it off well and deserved that semifinal spot. I'm a sucker for rock. Now this is how you do a feminist song. Jordan Smith isn't exactly a small artist. He won The Voice, and very deservedly so, because this man has the voice of a fucking angel. And now he's one of my favorite artists because of this contest. I wish he wasn't so underrated because Jordan Smith has one of the most beautiful voices I have ever heard. Remember when I said in order to impress me with R&B, you have to be really good and impressive? Well, Cisco was it. That's right, the guy known for the thong song competed in this too. And this song was fire, literally. The melody was just haunting and enticing, and dude has stage presence. The man just oozes confidence, and damn, he can dance. Out of all the R&B songs, this one deserved to pass, but didn't. But he sure as hell deserved that semi-spot more than North Carolina or Kansas. Out of all the R&B, Kansas makes it and not Cisco? This charming little rock band opened the whole contest. And they gave me hope that this contest was actually going to be good. I'm always a sucker for rock. Even for rock, though, they weren't fantastic, but you have to admit they were entertaining. Nevada brought the Crystal Method. They were okay, but it's not my genre of music, but the Crystal Method knows how to entertain. But it wasn't good enough to make it to the semis. This song sounded like it was an actual Eurovision song from the 2000s or early 2010s, mixed with a little bit of soul. And she had the outfits to match! I just wish we could have seen a full evolution of her outfit, but this is fine. Her song was boring and her performance wasn't the best, but she did her assignment well. Costume change, wig change, she set the stage on fire. If only the song was good, then I would have dubbed it a Eurovision-worthy performance. Anissa deserved that wild card. I normally hate this kind of music, but this song is really, really catchy. Now this is how you use your dancers. The backing vocals kicked her ass in the first performance, though. Oh yeah, fun fact, she's half Albanian. Yes, she's still American, but the Albanians get excited whenever they're represented anywhere, so let's just let them have it. Maybe she should do Eurovision for Albania. Maybe then they'd actually have a shot at winning. This is the closest you will get to me ever liking country music. I don't know if this really counts, though, as country. It has a bit of rock to it as well, what I'm saying is, it's unique. But she deserved that spot in the finals and the place she got. She has a beautiful voice, didn't need backups, and had a really great stage presence. Also, really nice to have Native American representation. Macy Gray was a big star that didn't move on, because she bumbled so bad with the background music and the background vocals. She was awful. She looked like a confused old lady on stage. And now for our very deserved winner of the whole contest. Yes, the winner of the American Song Contest was K-pop from Oklahoma. The moment I saw her, I'm like, this is my favorite. I'm not really a fan of K-pop, but she stole the whole damn show. The dancing, the long note, the lyrics, the death drop, the costumes, the staging, the splits, the flip, the stage presence, the lighting, the camera, and she did something different every single week. In the beginning, she made use of these red streamers and some amazing choreography. In the semis, she descended from the streamers like an acrobat, and then in the finals, those streamers were attached to a giant red throne. She wasn't exactly a big artist in the K-pop industry either. Her biggest song only has 28 million views, but she deservedly won because this was a Eurovision-worthy performance. It was also a unique song that was bilingual, by the way, and the only genre of its kind in the contest. She deserved that crown, and it's probably one of the most deserved ESC wins in history. Oregon understood the assignment. Look at this. Just look at it. The song was ass, but this performance screamed Eurovision and Oregon. They represented their state well, and they served the hosts smoothies. Again, something I didn't know was allowed in the rules, but this was nuts. This was an acid trip, just like Portland. Another unique Latin entry. Dude had a super radio-friendly summer song that was so catchy, and in the semis he rode on a real-ass frickin' motorcycle. Does Eurovision allow real-ass frickin' motorcycles? I didn't think so. How the fuck did this not make the finals again? The jury was obsessed with this guy in Heat 1 and picked him. He was like a former felon trying to get his life back together, so I think they picked him based on his story until they ditched him for. This was the jury's second favorite and apparently the favorite Yeehaw song of the whole contest, as it was the only Yeehaw song that made it to the final. And that's thanks to the jury because everyone else hated him. Remember when I said Illinois was the Sweden of the song contest? Well, I take back what I said. It's Texas that was the Sweden of the song contest. This was the Manzimele, or the Swedish fuckboy of the song contest. The LED special effects, the generic sexy boy song and outfit, and people voted for him because of simpery. I gotta hand it to him though. He can dance. But he lip-synced a lot. This song wasn't exactly fire, but it was different, colorful, cultural, and a much-needed breath of fresh air after Nebraska's snooze fest. I could also actually hear him sing, and I could tell he was actually singing and dancing. This was the jury's ultimate favorite child. This is who the jury wanted to win. The lyrics were amazing. Alan Stone is talented and he's good, but he's not Eurovision good. He lacks the Eurovision sparkle that Alexa has. Just because you look like a labradoodle doesn't make you Eurovision worthy. Jaco deserved better. He represented an old style of rock. It's like John Travolta and Ed Sheeran had a baby. Look at this dude. He's adorable. And his song was actually pretty good. This is what everyone thinks of when they think of America and Eurovision. And it is beautiful. Weird country cowboy rap. This dude became such a meme. They opened up Wildcard specifically because people were mad he didn't move on to the finals. It's just so goofy, and watching Snoop Dogg absolutely jam to this song was hysterical. This dude stole the show. People may forget about the American Song Contest, but I will never forget about New Boot Goofin'. Now, Kolko, you may say, that sounds like an interesting lineup. Why do you say it was bad? Well, what if I were to tell you that all the other songs were trash. Not just trash, though, boring trash. These were the only entries that were somewhat interesting, meaning half of the entries were boring songs. No, not even California was interesting. California, the place with Hollywood, only made it to the semis with a no-name group with a boring song. And that's not really great for the momentum. I mean, one can only take so many bathroom breaks. There was also a severe lack of genre balance in the later heats. About 50% were pretty good and about 50% were really bad, I'd say. We've had snooze fest of Eurovision entries before. It's not all about the entries that makes a show. So what else made the show so bad? Just like in real Eurovision, everybody hated the ASC jury because they picked songs that nobody liked, especially ballads and country music. And the jury discrepancy was really, really bad. Instead of each state having a jury, because that would take forever, it was by region of the USA, and the spokespeople were the acts that failed to qualify. People hated the jury so much that they significantly slashed the jury votes to where they were only like 1/6 of the audience. So that felt like poetic justice. A couple of other things I wanted to mention about the contest. Europeans could vote with the VPN. All the voting was done online and you had like a week to do so. I think these two did a good job hosting. They did the best they could with what they were given. They had all these cute little events and activities like a barbecue. They had little trivia sessions in between the acts where they quiz people on like little state facts. I honestly think it would be pretty funny to try to quiz an artist from Sweden about Lithuania. They commented on every song, but I could tell a lot of that commentary wasn't very genuine because after every performance they would always go, "Oh my gosh, that was so good!" Yeah, you can tell some of them were just being polite, which is typical American. For the postcards, they interviewed the finalists. They even drank the shitty kale smoothies that Oregon gave them. Kelly Clarkson and Snoop Dogg did their best with what they were given. And honestly, I respect them for that. They were more entertaining than I expected them to be, and I gotta give them a hand. Overall, I wish they would have given the ASC one more year at least. One more year after they just got their footing. I may be feeling nostalgic, but looking back, it was a lot better than I remember. We got to see all these small artists from across the country that are normally barred from a TV show like this because of LA nepotism, scouting agents, and other elitist bullcrap. Martin Estedal, if you decide to give this another run in the United States, I will actually submit something. Overall, it was a combination of the songs and the staging and the horrible issues with the technical producers that made the whole event lack Eurovision magic. A lot of people thought that it wasn't going to work out because, oh, Americans don't have any culture. They're not cultured enough to understand the Eurovision Song Contest. And to be honest, I had my doubts at first. But then look at what Oklahoma and Wyoming produced. Look at what American Samoa did. There were entries here that did have that Eurovision magic. It just wasn't many of them. I think the first step to making an event like this work would be to get Americans more into Eurovision first. And the best way to really get Americans into Eurovision is to have it more available to them, rather than just having it on YouTube. You need to broadcast it on a major TV station or have it stream on a major streaming platform in the United States. Once Americans see what Eurovision is all about, they'll be like, hey, I'd like that in my own country. This is fun. I get that they tried to do that with the Eurovision movie, but I don't think that was as successful because not a lot of Americans knew what Eurovision was in the first place. They just saw Will Ferrell and was like, ooh, Will Ferrell, I'll watch that. You need to get more Americans to watch OG Eurovision. And that includes making the Eurovision performances available to watch in the United States. Eurovision has already taken a big step forward in streaming Eurovision on YouTube for everyone to see. Long story short, I think if more people in this contest knew the original contest it was based off of, we would have seen a lot different results. And more importantly, a lot more entertaining results. The American Song Contest was really great in concept. There's needed to be better advertising and better organization. If it were a bit more organized and less chaotic, I think they could have really made something great. Hey everyone, I have a buy me a coffee now, so if you ever feel like supporting the channel because the last video got community guidelines struck, the link is in the description. Otherwise, keep on studying.